All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for showing up. Often people ask me kind of what I do up here when I do these little bows, and people put the palms together. They're not sure why. They don't know what it means. They start repeating things. They have no idea what they've just said. So one thing I just wanted to point out, that I always turn at the end and do a little half bow to that. It's called a tanka. It's a Tibetan art piece. This is what we call the medicine Buddha. And it was something that I started doing specifically to that one when the pandemic hit, and we had a lot of people in this community who, we knew that lost lives, and family and friends of people who lost lives. And so the medicine Buddha for me became a big part of my practice, but not just for that. In addition to it, anytime when we look at any of the Buddhist statues or the art pieces, the iconography of it, they all represent something, right? They're not, I'm not literally praying to a medicine Buddha to come and heal me, right? If I'm sick, I need to heal myself. But it's what they represent. And so the medicine Buddha represents healing. And the recognition that all of us, to some extent, in various ways, are suffering. We're dealing with discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, pain, loss, sadness, destruction, whatever that might be in your heart and your mind. It's what we're dealing with. And everyone in here is dealing with something different. There might be one person in here, possibly, it's not me, but who isn't dealing with any of that, but that's probably not the case. I just want to leave the remote possibility that there's someone in here who's not suffering at all, But it's to me as a practitioner, it's the recognition that there is pain, there is suffering that exists in my heart and mind, and I don't always know why it's there. I don't always know where it comes from. I don't know how it appears or shows up or plays out in my life, but it's there. And it's incredibly important to become aware of it, to recognize it, to notice it. And so for me, every single day when I do a bow to the medicine Buddha, what it does is it reminds me that there is suffering in my heart and in my mind. There is pain there. And I need to look at it. I need to acknowledge it. I need to become aware of it. I, in essence, need to, as we talk about in Buddhism a lot, become friends with it. Right? How many of you like becoming friends with the greed and anger and ignorance that's in your life? It's not so fun. For me to wake up one day and realize I was just a greedy, angry, selfish asshole was when I began this practice. That was what it took for me to actually look at that and acknowledge that and recognize that. Like, hey, all the problems in my life, I caused them. Like literally every one. And to be able to confront that and see that, to me, that's what this represents. It's looking at that pain that we carry in our hearts and our minds. And that's not fun at all. But it is the beginning of spiritual practice. To be able to be honest and authentic and genuine, first and foremost with yourself. And without that, it's really difficult for this practice to kind of go anywhere. One of my favorite expressions is an angry person who meditates is just a what? Angry meditator, right? So for me, having so much anger when I learned to meditate, then I was just some angry dude who was meditating. But I had to begin to look at, why is that anger there? Where is it coming from? What caused that to exist? And then I realized that it's just my own head. Obviously triggered by experiences in life and things like that. But then I had to begin to work on me. And, I've been at this every day now for 21 years. And I still got a long way to go. And often when I say that, people look at me, they're like, oh, he's so humble. He's so sweet. Look, he's so little. He's so nice. I've heard it all, right? I'm still that same asshole. I truly am. I just work harder. And most people don't believe me when I say that, but I promise you it's there. You just have to work as hard at this stuff as you do at everything else that matters in your life. Because ultimately, this stuff is what matters the most. It is the only thing that matters if you want to have a pleasant, happy life. And I also, for me, as I often say to people a lot, it's very often parents, dealing with kids and troubles and things like that. But I often tell people, like, hey, if this guy could find peace and happiness in his life, then anybody can. So, keep that in mind. And again, I get it. For some of you, it's impossible for you to see me any other way than this dude who sits here and says a bunch of good shit. But I'm not kidding. So whatever image you have of me, shatter that. Really. Otherwise, you're just harming yourself by some, inflation of a view you have of somebody. So on that, we're going to start with a meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free to say hello as you are. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. A couple things I'll tell you for those who may be here for the first time or doing meditation for the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. When you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. If you're on a bench or chair, same thing. Just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important from this practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from your practice, Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. with the body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It is not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And very often, as we know, the present moment is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, challenges. And this practice is learning to be with life as it arises and making choices that come from a place of loving kindness and compassion, not from greed and anger. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and every person you encounter every moment of your life. It is becoming aware of every single thing you think, every single thing you say, and every single thing you do, and understanding the intention and motivation behind these actions. This is not easy. And as I alluded to at the beginning, this isn't fun. But suffering sucks. So this practice will help you become aware of why that suffering is there, so you can do the things that are necessary to transform that into a life where you feel peaceful and happy and joyful. Because most people come into this practice have never felt that type of peace and joy in their life. That's how they end up here. You think the peaceful, happy people roam into this place? They just keep walking, you know? But together we sit to look honestly and authentically and genuinely at our mess. And when we begin to explore that together, and that's what Sangha is in community, we begin to figure out how to work through some of this stuff. But it's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course. It doesn't, in 6 months' time, just drastically change everything in your life. It is a slow practice. You know, as I always say, if you've been angry and pissed off for 40 years, it's going to take a little more than 6 months to cut through some of that. But it works if you stick with it. You just have to be patient with yourself and everybody else. And if you do that, then life can get a little bit better. So with that, I'll pause. For me, as always, I really prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And to those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. There's a chat box on your screen. Feel free to, if you have any questions, put them there. I'll do my best to respond. But we'll use the rest of our brief time tonight, and I'll respond to what's on your mind. So we'll open up to questions.
I'm not sure how reasonable the question is really, but I think that I am an empath in the sense that probably other people are who've had trauma that they've had to deal with, and they're sort of more alert and tuned in to their environment. And there are times when external events seem to have a big effect on me as a result. And I'm just looking for insights as to how to turn down that effect.
Yeah, so the question, just to paraphrase for those virtually or maybe didn't hear it, is as you described, referring to yourself as an empath, and when external events happen, they have a pretty strong effect on you. And your question is around how to kind of turn that down a little bit. First and foremost, I think it's important to understand that external events, large or small, in all likelihood, always will and probably should have an impact on you. To some extent. I mean, let's be realistic here, there's this, ultimate Buddhist teaching around enlightenment and equanimity as if nothing will faze you, right? And, I don't know about anyone else, but for me, it's not happening anytime soon. Things are going to continue to happen that will trigger me to feel a certain way. And I think in reality, as a practice, in the conventional reality, it's important to understand first, what is that you're feeling? And to recognize that. You use the phrase kind of turn it down. I don't know that you necessarily need to tune it down or turn it down, but recognize that things around us will happen that will cause us to feel destroyed. Tremendous pain, tremendous suffering, and just shattered. And obviously that's not good, right? That's not fun, but that's life. If we didn't feel those things, I'd be a lot more worried, right? So you feel those things. To me, as my master always said, when you ask questions, don't look for answers, just begin to rephrase the question. And so for me, the way to rephrase this question is, when it impacts me that way, now what do I do? Because to me, and again, I just ramble on a question. I'm not even really talking to you anymore, right? I'm just looking at you and talking. But the tuning it down isn't necessary. Feel what it made you feel. But then what is your response? If something happened that makes you feel anger, then see that anger, feel that anger. But when you respond with anger, that's where the problem is.
This is, I'm not saying I'm 100% right in this, but this is when I was aware of the severity of COVID before it was generally known to people that I know who were unemployed. And I was very concerned about that. And then later everyone was alarmed, and I felt more alarm as a result. I think through being an empath, I was tuned in and sort of sensing the collective angst that we were experiencing. I'm not sure of that. That's what I felt.
Sure.
Yeah. So it isn't so much that I can tune into a particular thing. It's more the awareness that I still need to live my life. I need to move on.
Absolutely, and that the last thing you said is you still need to live your life. So regardless of what the circumstance is, right? And it can be death and loss, it can be traumatic experiences, it can be your burgers made the wrong way, right? There are heavy, deep things that we suffer over, and then there's just being pissed off because your latte wasn't made properly, right? There's a whole scale of things. And they're all valid because they trigger us to feel a certain way. But the question then is, when we get triggered, how do we respond? And if we respond coming from a place of fear and anger and hatred, we're just going to create more fear and anger and hatred. So, I see all these opportunities, no matter what they are, that cause pain and conflict in our lives, as opportunities to practice compassion, to practice forgiveness, to practice love. And this is not easy. And we don't always want to feel this way. We don't always want to do that. Because we're still hurt. So, yeah, just watch the response. Yeah.
Question. The three causes of suffering that Buddha identified, right? Greed, ignorance, anger. What about fear? You know, when I think about the causes of my suffering, it's fear with pride close on the heels. Pride, I can fit in that framework, but what do Buddhist teachings have to say about fear and its opposite?
Sure. Well, don't take this the wrong way, but you know what fear is?
False evidence appearing real.
Well, sure, other than that, or exactly that, but fear is ignorance.
Huh.
Now, the reason I said, don't let me
Okay.
complete this thought, because I've in essence just called you all ignorant, right? It's always really fun when you wake up and realize you're greedy, angry, and ignorant, right? But to your point, to back up just for those who might be new, so the Buddha taught very clearly the Four Noble Truths. The first one, life is filled with dukkha, translates to suffering. It's a really terrible translation of the word dukkha, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, things that just don't go our way. Our entire life is filled with these things. It doesn't mean all life sucks. You're going to have a lot of happiness and joy and beautiful moments. You're also going to experience a lot of pain and suffering in your life, large and small, as I just referenced, right? That's the first thing he said. The second thing is, what's the cause? And this is what the question is about. What is the cause of our suffering? And the Buddha called this the three poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance, right? We overcome greed, and I'll get to your question in a minute. I just want to run through this. We overcome greed with generosity. We overcome anger with compassion, and we overcome ignorance with wisdom. So this is the practice. Practice, the generosity, compassion, and wisdom. The third one is the ending of suffering. Nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering, right? So simple. Happy day, yay, we're always good to go. And the fourth one is the path. And this is what the Buddha called the Eightfold Path. Having correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. In essence, this is your karma. Karma is not what you deserve. Karma is not what goes around, comes around. Karma is not getting. Karma is what we give. The word karma literally translates to action. And the Buddha taught that we generate karma three ways: body, speech, and mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. So if you've ever played pool, right, you hit the cue ball into the rack. Every time the cue ball goes into the rack, every ball goes into a different direction, every single time. Our entire life, we are that cue ball. Every person, place, and thing we interact with, we leave an imprint on. So the Buddha's teachings is to be mindful of our karma, meaning be not mindful of what we're getting, but mindful of what we're giving. Our thoughts, our words, and our actions, are they coming from a place of greed, anger, and ignorance? Or are they coming from a place of generosity, compassion, and wisdom? In other words, am I seeing the world as if I'm the most important person and the entire world revolves around me? Well, for the majority of my life, yeah, that's what I thought. And at least now I've seemingly convinced myself that I don't think that way. But even that is still coming from my own sense of self, right? But before we go into too much that direction. So the practice around fear, you'll also hear the words when it comes to the causes of suffering, right? I think you said pride, ego, attachment, sense of self, craving, desire. You'll hear all these words kind of bundled up as the causes of our suffering. But specifically around fear. The thing I love about looking at ignorance is it doesn't mean you're dumb, not educated. You're ignoring reality. True nature of reality. True nature of reality is what's actually happening. Our ignorance is that we see the world through our lens, which is incredibly different. Right? Every one of us sees things differently. You ever seen a Buddhist magic trick? You want to?
Yeah.
And don't give this away, Theo. See, he sits in the front. That means he hears everything quicker, so he's heard this one. What is this? Shout out.
A bowl.
A bowl? What else? A bell? What else? If you've heard this, don't ruin it. Cup, right? What is it now? It's a hat. Now, if I take it off and I put Lucky Charms in it and I start eating it, what is it? Cereal bowl. Did this ever change? No. The way we use it changed. Our ignorance is we look at this and we think one thing is only that. Fear is thinking that there's only one possibility that anything could happen. Do you ever get afraid that things might actually work out better than you thought?
Yeah, actually.
We don't have time to address that right now, but that's right. So, I mean, you said it, which I do often share, because I love that acronym, false evidence appearing real, for those who didn't hear it. But that is in essence ignorance. False evidence appearing real, meaning something we don't even know. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Did you drive here?
Yes.
Is your car outside? Maybe. You don't know. Right? Are you worried that your car got towed? Now you are. You're making this really easy. Sometimes this question's harder. You know? So, our mind creates so many stories in our heads. Ultimately, what this question comes down to is, again, to me it is ignorance, meaning you're ignoring reality, which is right now, we're just sitting here. Now, if I ask you to tell me everything that's wrong in your life and in the world around us, we'd be sitting here for days. And those are all just things in your head. Some of them are happening and some of them are just delusional, meaning ideas, thoughts. Right? So, that's why the meditation practice is critical. Learning, as I say at the end of meditation, everything beautiful just as it is. That doesn't mean everything in the world is beautiful. Everything in the world is a mess. Everything in our minds is a mess. But seeing it as beautiful is, to me, the way of seeing the mess. My mess is beautiful. I'm going to love it. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to work on it. Learning to be quiet and still and in the present moment allows us to be with life as it is. And then we begin to make change. But fear is just worried about things that haven't even happened yet. You have no idea if your car is there or not. You have no idea we don't even know if we're going to wake up tomorrow. We don't know that. I mean, we all probably think, I'm going to go to sleep, wake up tomorrow. You know how many people right now will not? I don't necessarily mean in the room. I'm not trying to put you all in panic mode. But we don't know. So, fear is ignorance. And I want to always throw out there, anytime I talk about this stuff for anybody who's never heard me or is here for the first time, a little asterisk that says, look, there are things that, if you're in abusive situations, be safe. Right? I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't be afraid of being harmed. Those things do occur and are very serious and are very real. But, I hate to put numbers on things, but 95% of these questions are not about fear of that. It's about fear of just stories in our head about making sure everything works out okay. So, does that help? Yeah. What else?
How do you have compassion towards those parts that are selfish, greedy, and angry?
In yourself or others?
Both.
What was your question about, though?
Self-criticism.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. So the question was, those in here, how do you have compassion in yourself for the greed, the anger, and ignorance? And I said self or others, and you were talking about yourself specifically, but also towards others. Because if it was about others, then my follow-up always is, first we have to learn to have that for ourselves, right? So at the end of every meditation, and I actually didn't say it today, but I almost always say, once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything outside of us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to everything outside of us, life gets simpler. And this is really where that comes in, is that we start with recognizing greed, anger, and ignorance in ourselves. But not to critique ourselves, not to judge ourselves, not to hate ourselves. The critique, the judgment, the anger is what we've lived with for so long, and that's why the greed is there. That's why the anger is there. That's why the ignorance is there. So self-compassion, self-love is first and foremost most important. And you know that, which is why this question is here. Then the question is, well, how do I do that, right? So Suzuki Roshi built San Francisco Zen Center. One of my favorite quotes he said is, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. Have you ever told yourself you're perfect and you just need a little improvement, or have you told yourself you're just a piece of shit most of your life? That's what we do. Maybe not all of you, but, For some reason, we have set this, and I don't have the answer to this, but for some reason, we have set this bar so high that we're supposed to be these, perfect beings. And then Buddhism comes in and actually makes it even worse. It ruins it. Because then we pick up some Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, Pema Chodron book. We're like, oh, they're talking about being nice, beautiful, peaceful people. And we read this book, and then we're like, well, I'm still a piece of shit because I can't do that. So then we start judging ourselves even harder because we're 3 months into Buddhism, and we're like, how come this hasn't worked yet? Right? you have probably in your life, and this isn't even personal because I don't know anything about you, gone through hell in your mind. Yeah? So for someone who's gone through hell, why do you think that you're supposed to be this like perfectly enlightened person? Be proud of yourself. What's that?
That's a good question.
Begin to ponder these things. Be proud of yourself. Instead of saying like, I'm just terrible. Pat yourself on the back sometime. Remember the old Saturday Night Live skit, Stuart Smalley, you know, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people love you. Do you remember that, seriously? If not, Google it, you know? But a lot of it is to be able to like just pat yourself on the back once in a while and be like, man, I've been through hell, but I'm here. I'm still fighting. I'm not going to give up. To me, that's why Buddhism was so beautiful, because it was actually, for someone with my personality, it was something you couldn't win. There was no conquering it. Because you weren't trying to beat something outside of yourself. It wasn't a game. You didn't have to win. You didn't have anything to prove. It was all about, could I just be kind and gentle to myself? And there is no short answer to that. There is no quick, like, here, turn to page 7, right? It is just a constant recognition of you've gone through hell and you're here. And if you continue to daily do a meditation practice, daily remind yourself, have gratitude and appreciation, you know, for everything you've gone through, for all the good and all the bad. And be patient with yourself. So, just some thoughts. You're not nearly as bad as you think you are, you know? Yeah.
And keeping the same train of thought with the controlling your feelings, whatever. My life is okay. It's pretty good. It's when I see my kids. There's 4 of them. They're not children, but they're young adults. And if I see them suffering, I want so much to help them at the expense of my own life sometimes, you know, that when I get pulled into their stuff, it ruins not my life, but my serenity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to control it.
Sure.
And maybe it's just been more and more. When I help them, they're very grateful, you know, but at a certain point, I hear, well, let them make their mistakes, that's part of growing up. It's hard to do. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do. And
Yeah.
it's getting too much lately. Too much compassion.
Sure. Yeah, you know, I can do my best to connect and relate to a lot of things. Obviously, well, not obviously, but not having children, I can never know what that's like. So anything I say, I mean, I'm making up everything, but especially this stuff, just take it with a grain of salt. But I think, and it's actually what you said out at the very end, which is at some point in time, enough is enough. Nobody can tell you, as you know, you're a smart dude, what that balance is. But if it is starting, you almost spoke what my response is in your question. Which you usually do. If it's starting to mess with your serenity and it's making you not healthy and not okay, then you need to draw some boundaries there to take care of you. Now, I just, you know, there's nothing obviously wrong with your kids are doing things that are, and I don't even know the details. I never know details. I don't want to know details. But your kids are doing things that are, whatever, harmful to them. You don't like it. It bothers you. You want to help them. Beautiful. You love your kids, you want to help them. But when it gets to a point where it's really just destroying you, whether they listen or not, I mean, we all know, how many of us listen to everything our parents told us to do or said, you know, unless you're here and you're 12 years old and your name is Thomas, you should always listen to what your parents say, right? But we don't. And they're not kids, as you said, anymore. They're young adults. But if it's ruining your happiness, you want to watch that also. They're not listening to you, and it's ruining your happiness.
They're having problems, just their circumstances are giving them pain. It's not maybe one has drugs, but before it's just life is getting difficult.
Sure. And it is. Again, part of this is seeing the true nature of reality, which is life is getting difficult for your children. Period. That's it. You have a big heart. You want to heal them. You want to fix them. You want to You want to solve their problems. You want them to have no problems and life to be simple for them. That's never going to happen. So in this moment, you are actually practicing the beautiful art of ignorance. You are ignoring the fact that life is going to be difficult for them. I'm not suggesting you should celebrate your children's difficulties, but they're experiencing life. And at moments in their life, it's going to be difficult, and at moments it will be joyful. So you're also practicing, you're suffering because of the ignorance of ignoring that that's part of their journey. And the practice of non-attachment is really critical here, which you've heard me talk about. Is non-attachment doesn't mean you don't love them, you don't care about them. Non-attachment is absolutely endless, boundless love for them, but also knowing that they're on their journey. And you can love them and have compassion for them and wish they don't suffer and do all you can at times for them, but it's their journey. And that's hard. And sometimes it's just going to be that way. And there is no answer. Yeah.
To volunteer an observation that I just realised, I suppose, from what's been said. People who are optimistic, even if they're very optimistic, that can undermine them in some ways, but it's really beneficial if you're in a situation where you're afraid of stuff. Because you look at it inherently in an automatically positive light, which may be very inaccurate, but it's a lot easier to live with. Somebody who's a skeptic takes the scenarios ahead of them and draws all sorts of horrible conclusions, and then has a big battle.
Sure.
My point is, what I'm realizing at least, is that recognizing the need, in fearful situations, recognizing the need to put a tint on that is an optimistic tint deliberately in order to manage that situation for oneself.
Sure. So, what this situation comes down to and what we're ultimately talking about here, which I'm sure nobody in this room likes to try to do, is what? You all want to try to do what to other people? Control. I'm sure no one in here has any control issues whatsoever. But what we're talking about here is our desire to try to control life around us. And on a practical sense, I hear you, and I think it is, for me as a practitioner, if there's concern about something, yes, I get the spin on, as you said, the need to be optimistic versus pessimistic, because that's more joyful, right? But ultimately, the practice isn't about being either. And that might sound kind of depressing at first, but reality is reality. How we spin it, how we try to tell ourselves to be optimistic or pessimistic is still just a made-up story. So always vote for optimism over pessimism, but even as you said, optimism might even set you up for a greater failure. For me as a practice, I try to be not optimistic or pessimistic about anything. And then you just face life as it occurs. Here's this problem. Here's this pain. Here's this joy. Here's this sadness. Here's this happiness. You're just taking moment-to-moment interactions with life as it arises. You're not trying to plan anything. And again, for someone who spent a majority of his life trying to control everyone and everything, this practice has been life-changing. Because you're in essence surrendering and saying, I'm just going to focus on me. My thoughts, my words, my actions, and see how that plays out. So, we'll do one more before we wrap up here. Question? Yeah, sorry.
I don't know anything about Buddhist teaching, but is there anything that kind of focuses around maybe embracing the darkness or the bad, but kind of in a healthy way, not being lost in it, but kind of I don't know, accepting it?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So the question, for those who didn't hear it, you don't know anything about Buddhism, which is always ironic because anytime anyone says they don't know anything about Buddhism, they ultimately respond with something that is absolutely Buddhist. So, and then you said, is there anything that says anything about embracing the darkness, accepting it, and just kind of being with the bad? Yes, everything, actually. I mean, that's in essence what all the Buddhist teachings is about. The only thing that I would kind of, I don't know if caution is the right word, but the only thing that I would kind of suggest is that the practice, ultimately, and conventionally this might sound a little strange at first, but ultimately it's not about seeing any situation as bad or good. Now that doesn't mean there aren't things in life that we do or that occur that aren't bad to the way we all know they're bad, right? This isn't like your get out of jail free card that says, oh, Buddhism says there's no good or bad, so I can just, be a whatever. No, there are things that we should not do. But understanding that embracing what you call the bad is actually an opportunity to create change, right? If we're causing harm to self or others, this is bad, the way we know bad. So it's an opportunity to create change. So it is embracing it, yes, but then what? And very often people who maybe kind of are new to Buddhism or come across Buddhism think that it's like I said, it's almost this kind of get out of jail free card that you can just say, well, I'm Buddhist, nothing matters. Everything matters. Everything is important. All of our thoughts, all of our words, all of our actions, they're all important. And when we have thoughts and words and actions that are, as you refer to, are kind of bad, this is an opportunity to recognize that. This is what spiritual growth is about. It's not, they call it spiritual bypassing, but it's not ignoring all of that. It's actually recognizing these things and working on creating change. But creating this change, kind of back to the question earlier, without hating yourself. Because if you recognize, as I said, your greed, anger, and ignorance, and you just hate yourself for that, that's just going to cultivate deeper seeds of greed, anger, and ignorance. So, does that kind of answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Say again, sorry?
I know, I never really responded. It's really helpful.
I didn't hear anything you said, I'm
It's
sorry.
really helpful.
Helpful, good. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. The benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host, Anna, has a few announcements for us.
Hello everyone, I'm tonight's host, Anna. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Is it back?
Yes, back.
And the food distribution is back. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay and close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well. Hope to see you again. And Dharma Bum Temple will be marching in the Pride Parade Saturday, July 20th. Please go on our website and click Pride Parade to sign up or see the flyer on the wall with the QR code. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Thank you all.